today on the Frontline Health podcast.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's nothing more than just your immune system kind of overreacting. And it's somebody who is very sensitive to everything. So, mast cells, just to kind of give some background, are immune cells that release the histamine that we already talked about and other inflammatory compounds. So, if you have this mast cell activation syndrome, then your mast cells are reacting all the time. And it can change just really with kind of the slightest things. So if you have temperature changes, if you have certain foods that you eat that have greater histamine in them, if you have higher stress or you're exposed to fragrances. And obviously during the spring, when we have more pollen and there are more allergens out there that people are getting exposed to, you also have an increase in mold because it's starting to get warmer and you typically have more rain, at least in the south. That can increase the histamine levels in your body and really cause things to pour over that histamine bucket, if you will, because there's only so much that they can take on before it starts to pour over and they have some serious reactions.
Welcome back to the Frontline Health podcast, where we help you take ownership of your health with news, tips, and insights. Spring is one of those seasons that people look forward to. You know, you have longer days, warmer weather, everything coming back to life. Right now, it's about 78 degrees for me here in Dallas, Texas, and I'm loving it. But for a lot of people, spring also means itchy eyes, congestion, headaches, fatigue, skin reactions, sometimes even anxiety or brain fog. And the really weird thing, not everyone reacts to spring allergies the same way. Some people barely notice the pollen, others feel completely wiped out. And today we're going to be talking about why that is, including a condition called MCAS, why histamine plays such a big role, and what you can do before allergy season peaks to reduce how hard spring hits you. Troy, do you deal with any kind of spring allergies this time of year?
Periodically, I will. It's usually not too bad, thankfully, but it really depends on the pollen season. If it ramps up, it can certainly get me some itchy eyes and a little watery nose. And that same release that we're seeing of histamine across the board, which seems to be the big issue when you're talking about allergies. So if you're not familiar with histamine, it's really just a chemical in our body that responds to uh, any type of immune system. So if you've got an injury, if you've got a fever or a virus or bacterial infection, histamine's released. So it's something that's actually good. But in this case, when you're talking about allergies, your immune response is overacting and it's overreacting to whatever is coming into that. And we get too much histamine and our body just can't break it down, which gives us that runny nose. It causes us to sneeze. You get those itchy eyes. You get some of that headache from the sinus pressure that you can have, and you can even get hives and some of the brain fog. So spring allergens are a real big deal for a certain segment of our population. Anybody who has allergies to pollen, that's a big, big deal. And like you said earlier, not for everybody, but it certainly is a big deal for a large portion of our population.
Especially those of us who live in the South and are very well acquainted with pollen.
That's right, for sure.
So this kind of brings us to MCAS, which stands for mast cell activation syndrome. Can you explain that for us and help us understand why people with MCAS are impacted by allergies more than others?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's nothing more than just your immune system kind of overreacting. And it's somebody who is very sensitive to everything. So, mast cells, just to kind of give some background, are immune cells that release the histamine that we already talked about and other inflammatory compounds. So, if you have this mast cell activation syndrome, then your mast cells are reacting all the time. And it can change just really with kind of the slightest things. So if you have temperature changes, if you have certain foods that you eat that have greater histamine in them, if you have higher stress or you're exposed to fragrances. So a lot of people, if they have mast cell activation syndrome and you see those plugins when you go into different offices or homes, those plugins can really trigger in people this
Mhm.
mast cell activation, and it can cause certain issues. And really, even those people, if they over exercise, it can cause that as well. So you've got to be very, very cognizant of what's going on. And obviously, during the spring, when we have more pollen and there are more allergens out there, that people are getting exposed to. You also have an increase in mold because it's starting to get warmer and you typically have more rain, at least in the south. That can increase the histamine levels in your body and really cause things to pour over that histamine bucket, if you will, because there's only so much that they can take on before it starts to pour over and they have some serious reactions. And some of them are just reactions like being more sensitive to certain things and greater symptoms. So they may have itchy, watery eyes more often, but typically you'll see them with greater headaches. You'll see them with more brain fog. They may even have more inflammation related issues. So joint pain that's coming on to them. And they can be sensitive even to the touch with things. So it really is a very debilitating piece that people have to learn how to deal with and try to overcome through their diet, through their exposure, and trying to create a better environment for them as they go through life.
Yeah, it really is fascinating. Just to think about how people's bodies respond differently to these different inputs through to these different allergens, and how some people are able to handle it fine, whereas others have these extreme reactions, and then there's everywhere in between that somebody could be experiencing. So, why is that the case? Why do some people handle spring just fine, while others, particularly those with MCAS, feel miserable?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can start by blaming your mom or dad. So typically that's where it starts. So if you've got bad genes, you can always blame your mom and dad for that. So your body just was not delivered a good hand to deal with allergens that come across, or maybe you're more susceptible to them. The other thing could be nutrient deficiencies that come in. So you may not be getting the right foods in your diet or nutrients in your diet and able to help your body to overcome some of those responses, or you're getting the wrong ones in your body. And we know that different things like seed oils and certain foods that are high in histamine, like bananas, overripe fruit, meats that have been I guess, kept around for a couple of weeks instead of eating them right away. So, one of the big things that we know with mast cell activation syndrome is you want to eat the foods that you're getting right away instead of letting them
Hmm.
stand around and have leftovers, because the longer they're around, the more histamine's released in that food. And then you also have gut health. So, if you've got poor gut health, then there's a greater likelihood that you're going to be affected by some of these histamines that are getting released and the allergens that are coming into your body. So those are the big things that are coming in, and certainly any time of the year when there are more allergens out there, it becomes a bigger issue because your body is trying to take on so many different things at once. And if you've got multiple allergens, then you're going to have a bigger response from your body for because of those allergens that you're taking on.
Man, it would get it would be really easy to get overwhelmed if you were somebody with MCAS or that has these type of insensitivities as we get near the spring, because that's a lot to take into consideration and a lot of different things that can cause you a good deal of discomfort. So if there's somebody listening to this and they want to know, what can they do to prepare for spring allergies, what would be some good things for them to try?
Yeah, I think understanding the season. So we know that we're going into a high allergy season. So begin to prepare yourself with the right foods. An air purifier when you're at home is not a bad idea because that helps to reduce the histamine exposure that you're having from those allergens because it'll hopefully suck those up. Get inside. Once you're inside after being outside for some time, go ahead and shower, change your clothes. If they're high pollen days, to make sure that you're not keeping that on your body and sucking those in. And then making sure that your windows are actually closed during those days, which is a difficult one to do because most people naturally during the spring want to open up their windows after a long winter and cold winter. We like to keep those things closed. But when there are high allergens and you've got mast cell activation syndrome or you're um, at a particular allergen that affects you the most, then it's a good idea to just avoid them altogether. And then you really want to work on your nutrients. So vitamin C we know is a strong supporter of the immune system, and it helps reduce and break down those histamines. Magnesium's another one. Zinc, copper, and then those B vitamins that we talk about a lot. So make sure that you're keeping up with those things because it'll help your body fight it off a little bit faster and break down the histamines. And then really working on your stress and sleep because we know that the more stressed you are and the less sleep you have, then it actually activates more of those mast cells and releases more histamine. So you've got to be cognizant of those things and really, really try to stay as healthy as you can, get the best rest you can.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And going back to the nutrient piece, we actually did create a product recently to help people with exactly this issue called Histex. Histex, when most people are thinking of things that can help with spring allergies, they're thinking about something that they can take in response to the symptoms that they're experiencing, right? They're getting the itchy, watery eyes, the runny noses. They want to take something that's going to stop that right away. This is not a quick fix like an allergy medication, but it is actually a supportive daily supplement for people who know that spring hits them hard and can kind of help them prepare their body by loading up on those nutrients that can help fight against this. So, can you explain kind of how Histex works, Troy?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the root of the problem. So we're trying not to treat the symptoms, but really help support the or support the mast cells in the body so your immune response is as healthy as possible. So with the vitamin C in there, we know that it's going to help act as an antioxidant, and it's also going to help break down the histamine that you come in contact with. And then it's got magnesium, zinc, and copper that really help regulate the immune response and the histamine activity, trying to just level that out so it's not going to super peak or super valley when you're talking about your immune response, but it's giving your body everything it needs to really take on these allergens. And then you've got the vitamin B12 and folate in there just to help with histamine clearance and really help with the methylation pathway itself. So, particular ingredients within Histex itself, the quercetin and luteolin, we know that they're bioflavonoids that really help with mast cell stabilizers or mast cells and kind of just keeping them level because actually quercetin has been used probably for 20 years off and on by doctors to help people who have severe allergies this time of year, just to kind of help get over that. There's bicolin and bicoline in it, which are really to kind of help support the inflammatory response that's going on. It has resveratrol, which has done a great job in studies of just helping your body overcome anything that it's coming up against, especially when you're talking about immune health. It's got some stinging nettle in there, which has been used for seasonal allergy support. And then it's got pine bark extract, which we know is going to help with inflammatory health overall. And really understanding all that stuff is it's trying to just help your immune system function the best possible way without getting out of whack. It is one of those things that if you just take on a regular basis, it's certainly going to help. It may not take care of all your symptoms. It may not keep all your symptoms at bay, but it's going to help level it out where you don't necessarily have as much of a peak in those allergy symptoms and hopefully do it in a healthier way without some of the side effects that often come with the antihistamines that we take, like brain fog and other things like that.
Yeah, that is awesome and a totally different way of thinking about spring allergies than the way that most people tend to think about them. So you don't have to wait, right? You can actually do things to prepare yourself and to prepare your body for this season that can be taxing for some people. I know from personal experience, spring allergies can really suck the fun out of an otherwise beautiful time of the year when the temperature starts to rise, the flowers start blooming, and we start getting outdoors again. And as we've discussed, for some people, especially those with histamine sensitivities or MCAS, it's not that they can't enjoy the season, it's just that for them, spring is going to require a much more intentional approach. The good news that we've talked about, there are ways to get ahead of it. Educating yourself through things like this podcast, preparation and consistency really matters. So if you want to learn more about Histex, you can find it at www.centurion.health. And as always, this podcast exists to help you ask better questions, understand your body, and take ownership of your health because you are your best health advocate. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Frontline Health Podcast.
If you enjoyed what you heard today on the podcast, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. We would love to hear your comments or questions about anything we've talked about on the show. For more health news, tips, and insights, follow us at Centurion Health on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. And for safe, effective, and affordable healthcare products made in the USA to help you elevate your health and life, visit centurion.health. We look forward to you joining us next time on the Frontline Health Podcast by Centurion.